On second thought, this is episode 365. Man, that's a lot of episodes. We got to find a better hobby. Powered by Hook'em.com. I'm Cedric Golden of the Austin American-Statesman, joined as usual by Taylor's favorite duck, Kirk Bohls. And Duck, what a treat we have for our viewers and listeners. Heather Dinich, the hardest working woman in show business from ESPN, is joining us. Heather, how are you today?
I'm great, guys. Thank you so much for having me on. This is an absolute privilege. You guys do amazing work, so thank you.
Well, it's great to see you. Nothing like a very uh small little Friday news dump, right? Friday night. Cedric and I are covering college softball, the national championship game when that thing broke. Where were you and what was your immediate reaction?
I was at a youth lacrosse tournament
Nice.
in Bethany Beach with my entire family, and my reaction was, "What time is it?"
Exactly.
But you know what? Having had the opportunity to cover both Bob Knight and Joe Paterno throughout my career, I have the luxury of appreciating perspective and the ability to understand that what we're all doing right now is truly a historic moment in college athletics. And while a lot of us get caught up, and understandably so, in the daily grind of it, I have a sincere appreciation for the fact that 20 years from now, much like I look back on my career covering some of these legends in college athletics, that this was a part of history. And this truly changed sports in the collegiate atmosphere as we know it. And it's going to be really interesting to watch unfold over the next 5, 10 years or so.
The two
No
point
more amateurs.
yeah, the $2.8 billion House settlement got final approval from the Honorable Judge Claudia Wilkin, and colleges can now pay athletes. It is a landmark decision. 75% of football makes me want to strap on a helmet and some pads. 15% to basketball. I'll take it. That's my sport. 5% to women's basketball. And then the rest, they divvy it up. And I'm going to tell you that little 5% that's the rest is still a nice little piece of change. But let me ask you this, Heather. What does it change for the big guys that still have the bigger collectives? Is there still going to be some maneuvering to get these kids even more money? Because I still don't think it's going to be a level playing field.
No, it never has been, and it never will be a level playing field in college football. And I think one of the biggest questions I have that no one can answer in a position of authority right now, this skinny minute, is who is going to make sure that the quarterback or the wide receiver actually reports this NIL deal? I don't know.
Exactly.
I don't know.
Exactly.
We're
And
not
and who's
cynical. This is real. This is real.
yeah. And who is going to prevent the booster from just dropping some cash in the Venmo account?
The
Ah,
good old days.
I I mean, this,
oh,
to be fair to the commissioners and the athletic directors and Charlie Baker, the NCAA president, they are trying so hard to get this right. And what they've done is a step in the right direction because the revenue share is finally going to athletes who are putting on the show, right? You're paying the actors on the Broadway play,
yeah,
finally. The
yeah.
people who are bringing in the tickets are getting a piece of the pie. And that's important. But how it's going to be regulated is a huge question. I have talked to people who say we're going back to the old days where people just kept cheating, and
Bagman is the
that's
bagman
that's
is back.
Where's Bill Clements?
not.
And don't you think, guys, that all these schools are rushing for front-loaded contracts, and they already have agreed to these contracts during, high school recruiting, transfer portal in January and again this spring. So a lot of these contracts are already done. So I think a lot of this is going to pertain to the next season more than anything else. But the other thing too is like Cedric mentioned about the level playing field. You look at Michigan, they just announced this week they're cutting 10% of staff. 10%. That's more than the janitor and the secretary. I mean, that's substantial. And they said they had a $27 million deficit, and they're adding 82 scholarships. They have to pay for that too. So, in your mind, Heather, do you think we're going to see more massive cutbacks like this? And are you worried that Olympic and women's sports might bear the brunt of that and those programs might be slashed?
Yes, because to your point about Michigan, people need to understand that the Alabamas and the Ohio States of the world also have budgets that they have to regulate and adhere to. And what's going to happen over the next 5 to 10 years is you're going to see even schools at that level have to make choices and have to make priorities. And all of those things that you're talking about could essentially lead to an old conversation we've had about super conferences. Because you could get the Ohio States and Alabamas and Michigans of the world saying, why the hell are we sharing money with the Vanderbilts and Indianas of the world who
Right.
are only getting a slim percentage, bringing it back into the pie here? And so I think you could see that conversation in the future. But again, back to the money and the punishments, if you're going to really scare these athletic directors into following these rules, you gotta sock them with more than $7 million. You gotta hit their pockets to the points of $50 million where they possibly have to consider cutting sports. You gotta really scare people into following the rules here because Greg Sankey, the SEC commissioner, said on the teleconference, the video conference this week, you guys wanted the rules. You asked for them. Here they are. The onus is on you to follow them. Well, we've seen how this this works, not just in the SEC, but everywhere else. It's an age-old problem in college sports.
People want to win.
Yes, you mentioned Venmo. Oh no. Nah, there's not going to be any Venmo. I'm telling you, you talked about the old days. We're going back to meet me in the Walmart parking lot, and here's a briefcase. Oh, and I'm sorry, I know you're 19 years old. This is called cash money. This is we're not, there's not going to be any electronic fingerprints or footprints. These kids are going to be getting hordes of cash in a brown paper bag or whatever you want to call it, because the super conferences make so much sense right now. If you told me, Heather, that the SEC and the Big Ten and what's left of the ACC and if Yormark wants to play ball, the Big 12, if they decided to get together and have a 65 team super football conference and say, look, we'll let the NCAA keep basketball and the other sports because they do a good job of those, but we're going to do this and we're going to get ESPN, we're going to get the mouse on board because the mouse has to sign off on this. The mouse is bigger than Claudia Wilkin. The mouse is running this thing. If the mouse and Fox sign off, why wouldn't they do super conferences?
I mean, I don't know. It's a great question, but I do think a lot of it goes back to two things that are on the side here, but we got to acknowledge Title IX,
Yes.
right? And lawsuits pushing back at every angle. It's funny because I'm a sports writer and not a politician for a lot of reasons, not a mathematician for a lot of reasons, and not an attorney, right? And here we are talking numbers, politics, and legal issues in college sports over the past however many years, and that's what it's going to be going forward. But I think when you start to talk about those things, you can't do that without having serious conversations about the likes of collusion and Title IX and equity and all of those other questions as well. But I think the group of five, group of six is actually kind of in a good spot here because their biggest concern, I don't necessarily know that this is going to exacerbate the gap that exists between them and everybody else, but their bigger concern is how they're faring against their peers, right? Because, Akron's not competing against Ohio State for maybe some fringe recruits, but like, you know what I mean? Like this is two conversations here in terms of two different
Yeah.
leagues of play, really.
I think what we're going to see a lot is the corporation model, growing in stature. And like Texas, for instance, is aggressively seeking corporates to kind of help finance the quote NIL part. So then that would free up a lot of that 20.5 million revenue sharing for other sports. Eventually, if the corporate model can fill in the gap, that's what I'm told by Texas people. But still, I do worry about the lesser sports. And to Cedric's column about the mega conference, you got 67 schools in the Power Four, and then you have Notre Dame, you have 68, which is a nice little number. It works for basketball. So I'll be shocked if we don't end up there at some point. But that would sadden me because there are 134 football schools, so they all got to be one. And to basketball, Heather, I mean, the Dukes and Kentuckys and Indianas and the Kansases, they don't want to spend all their money on football. So do they rely on the bag man or the corporate model, you think?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is just the same in those sports too, but I am curious to see the school's allocation for funds when you have stronger programs outside of football and how that works
Right.
and how the dynamic works in the athletic department in terms of the coaches saying, "Hey, we're a revenue driver here, man," and
Yeah.
having
Where's my cut?
Right, exactly. I mean, you guys know covering baseball and softball, there are some programs that are that's where their strength is, the baseball and softball. Not necessarily the revenue driver, right? We know
Right.
what the revenue drivers are, but in terms of strength and brand and things like that, do they wind up getting a little bit more of the cut? But I think what's going to be interesting is seeing the human element on the enforcement arm of it parsing through these hundreds of thousands of NIL deals coming in over $600. I mean, I don't know about you, but like my phone breaks on a big text chain. This is like this is
Huge.
this is a computer system that wouldn't surprise me if it crashes in like 24 hours with everybody throwing all of this information at them. It's going to be
You
fascinating.
know how many coaches loved the clearinghouse back in the day because there was such a backlog to which you just spoke. And it's like, and how is this going to work? Like you said, hundreds of thousands. It's going to just be happen overnight. I mean, come on.
Well, and are there people on the backside going through these who, for example, know that Arch Manning and let's say Drew Aller are going to be two top NFL draft picks.
Oh
And
yeah.
so they have offers coming in that are well over $600, 25, 30, $50,000 with legit business organizations,
Exactly.
legit offers for legit work. And then let's say you have another quarterback somewhere else at another school who just submitted a $2 million request. Do the people on the other side know the value of the quarterbacks as well as the value of the business transaction? Because that's a red flag. If you've got NFL like top five picks making 40, 50 grand, and you got some random other wait that fourth round pick, and he's throwing in 2 million. Somebody's be like, wait a minute.
What's fair market value? What's fair market value? Like Deloitte's saying, I don't envy their task at all.
I'm going to tell
No.
you,
Yeah,
if I had a college-aged kid that was an athlete, I mean, he'd come out with like six PhDs. He's gonna stay as long as he can stay because there is big money. Remember when we just a few years ago, guys, we were saying, why would these college coaches leave for the NFL? There's big money to be made in college. Sarkisian's making $10 million a year, but now these kids are making more money. The women's basketball players have zero incentive to go to the WNBA early because they're making more money in college. So let me ask you this. What about the little guys? What about the power fours, the non-power, the group of five, group of six that are going to be allocating 13 to 16 million dollars per roster? that's still a pretty penny. Are they going to be able to meet the needs and still compete for those fringed prospects that made them competitive? There used to be like a third string quarterback in a Power Four team.
It is, and I think they're going to be okay because again, their budgets, they're competing against each other more so than they are the upper echelon of the Power Five. So I feel like as long as they are all within range of each other, remember the 20.5 million is a cap, right? So
Mhm.
you could have group of five schools all opting in at like not opting in, but like saying like 15 is our max, you know? Well, is the 15 max that the Mid-American Conference doing? Is that more than Conference USA? Is that more than the Sun Belt? You know, who's winning that financial battle on that side? But to your point about the parents and kids staying in school and doing that, I gotta weigh in on that as a mom of three boys because I have parents asking me all the time from Olympic sports, like, what does this mean? And what we are talking about here collectively is such a small percentage of elite athletes,
Mhm.
the best, you know, and I see this at the youth sport level because coaches are offering high school kids money too, you
Crazy.
know, and then everybody's eyes get real big, like, oh, my kid can get paid as an eighth grader, you know, and it's just like,
Slow
hold
down.
on a minute. Yep, I got two pieces of advice for you, everybody. Work hard and get good grades, okay?
That
Let's just go old school for a
Yeah,
minute.
I think the money may decline as a rule, but the superstars, like you mentioned, those five-star quarterbacks, they're going to still be making the big buck. Real quickly, I wanted you to weigh in on private equity. That's kind of been a sidebar to all this. Do you think any schools are going to embrace that? And, I wrote just today that, thankfully we're not going to see the HEB grocery store logo at midfield at DKR, and we're not going to see the Bucky's logo on helmets and stuff. But do you think some schools are going to embrace that, Heather?
I think at some point they're going to be forced to find alternative ways. I mean, we saw, I can't remember, you guys probably know, was it Oklahoma State who was trying to put the QR codes on the
Yes,
helmets
it was.
Yes.
last year? You know, finding more creative ways of doing that. And ultimately, yes, I mean, wherever you can get the money and the resources from, because remember, this $20.5 million cap is for this year. It's gonna
Going to
Going
go.
up.
increase.
It's
Going
going
up.
to. Yeah.
Yeah, incrementally. So, how financially sustainable is this for athletic departments, many of which do not get help from university funding to survive?
Right, right. And I think a lot of we're going to see student fees go up. Like, do you want big time sports? Your big ticket, as it's called in some places, may just double or triple. If you
Right.
and then they may resent, like, well, wait a minute, these players and athletes are getting everything, and I barely get room and board. Mine is going to go up. So
Right.
this is fraught with peril. So
It
the
is.
last thing I want to ask you real quick is Texas going to win the whole thing?
Ah, my buddy Feinbaum thinks they are.
Yeah, there we
I know,
go.
but
There we
so I
go.
like Texas to win the SEC, but I'm not ready yet to say that they're going to win the national title and
Woo.
because they've got so many questions.
Man,
This pressure on Arch Manning is it's too much. Okay, the mom in me is coming out now. All right. Let the kid fail. Let him fail. You know, he's gonna make mistakes. Holy cow, he's got to play against Ohio State. He's gonna be great. He has to be great for them to win the national championship. And I think that it's just too early to say these guys are a lock because I mean, beyond the true, not true freshman, but beyond the first year starting quarterback, you guys know there's a lot of other holes on that team. They lost so much that they got to fill. So there's a lot of questions, I think.
finally,
Two
some
starts,
levity.
Arch.
Finally, some levity on the podcast. And everybody's, oh, can't wait for the national title. I'm like, yeah, yeah, you can. You can wait. You probably can wait a year for the
Slow down.
national title.
Slow down.
But for all of our friends out there, you got to follow Heather Dinich on ESPN. Follow her on X. She's got all the
He's the
scoop.
best.
And for you parents out there, I'm going to repeat what the NCAA says. 99% of your kids are going pro in something other than athletics. So don't get excited about this house settlement. It's not for you. Heather, thank you so much for joining us. We're going to do it again sometime, hopefully before the season. If not, we'll do it during the season. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thanks, guys.
Bye, Heather. Thank you.